With the Fed cutting rates by 25 basis points exactly as everyone was expecting, markets are actually falling right now because of the implications and expectations for cuts or lack of cuts in the upcoming year of 2025. And I want to actually talk about a few things in this video, specifically one of the main things about why this is pretty irrelevant, and actually dive into more important data that I think is going to guide us over just the next week or so and be more interesting as well. So if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe for daily cryptocurrency videos. And without any further ado, let's take a look at this chart right here. I just put this on very quickly. Each one of these vertical lines is an FOMC meeting. So far I have them going all the way back to about summer of 2023. But what is one thing that you notice? Okay, first of all, well, we did get a Fed rate cut today, interest rates by 25 basis points. Now the rates sit between 4.25 and 4.5%. Okay, and you see this top comment right here, right? Bullish for Bitcoin and markets. Well, why are the markets actually going down right now? The stock market, Bitcoin, why is everything going down? Well, more so because people are anticipating that in 2025, we will not get the previous 4 rate cuts or even the 3 rate cuts. Maybe we'll only get 2. Maybe we'll see a pause for longer. Maybe we'll see the horrifying phrase higher for longer, right? People have been like afraid of that possibility. And I want to talk about, specifically, we look at this chart. Is there any pattern? Is there any meaningful pattern you can see every time we had a FOMC meeting? No, not really. I mean, your attention might get drawn to this, thinking, oh, we had this meeting and then the price shot up. Well, no, it had nothing to do with FOMC. This was when Donald Trump got elected and people realized that there's going to be more pro-crypto policy in the US. That's what this one is. And you might be thinking, oh, well, what about this one? Price definitely reacted right at this FOMC, right? No, I mean, this was kind of like as the Bitcoin spot ETFs got approved and really started gobbling up Bitcoin. So there's not really any correlation between these FOMC meetings. And basically, the one thing there is that on the day of FOMC, usually we get a massive swing up and then a massive swing down, or the exact opposite, a massive swing down and a massive swing up. Today, are we really seeing anything crazy? I mean, no, not really. The price is down 2 to 3%. But overall, this meeting, in my opinion, is not incredibly important. And I've been saying that for like the last 6 to 8 months, is that people just overhype these meetings and they're not very important or meaningful. You can kind of just go to sleep and ignore them. As Mike Alfred actually points out, Fed rate cuts, they cut rates by 25 basis points, but signal that there's going to be fewer cuts going forward. Yields are up, dollars up, stocks and Bitcoin are down slightly. His guess is that this will be a nothing burger in a week or two, and it's definitely more hawkish than expected in the short term. So in my opinion, this is slightly more hawkish in the short term. But in about, I don't even want to say 2 weeks. I think in a couple days, maybe like literally 2 or 3 days, nobody's going to care about this. And the markets are just kind of continue on the trend, at least the crypto markets, as expected. Now, one of the major things I actually want to talk about is this, and I think this is a very big, from a technical analysis and a charting perspective and a price perspective, this is really big, and I want to jump into that. But before we do, let's cover a few other things. So we see that Bitcoin was just about $16,000 exactly 2 years ago. It was slowly recovering from the collapse of FTX, and macro analysts were calling for a $5,000 Bitcoin. Where are they now? Yes, so even today with our micro dip, we're down like 2-3% today, right? Oh, this is horrible. Everyone's panicking. Oh my gosh, the world is ending. 2 years ago, we were at $16,000. Everyone was panicking. And so many analysts, the most retweeted, the most views, the most engagement anyone was getting were people that were telling us we were going to $5,000, $10,000. Believe it or not, I'm not even kidding. Some people were saying 3,000, like just the craziest targets. And they never ended up happening, right? 16,000 was the bottom. So, and that absolutely was the best time to buy. I think I remember I scooped some Bitcoin right around 17 or 18,000. So I didn't quite get the exact bottom, but I mean, I was pretty happy with getting some Bitcoin at that price. And same thing now. Here we are 2 years later. We are much higher than $16,000 per Bitcoin, but you can see the price today and on a weekly chart is slightly red, right? You can see it's a little bit red. and people are scared. I don't know. I don't know how. If you're in crypto for more than 10 minutes, then you're probably not scared. But for all the people that are newer to the space, this is really scary, right? We're down a couple percent. And the bigger picture is, this isn't bearish. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. So for example, while you were scared, BlackRock bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in the last 48 hours. Okay, that's what smart money is doing. Baby money is just crying right now. If you're upset and you're scared right now, it's because you're baby money. But we also see that BlackRock, iShares, ETF, assets under management versus gold. Look at this. It's quite literally, this blows my mind every time I see this. This is the Bitcoin spot ETF, right? IBIT, just IBIT. We're talking about one ETF. Look at how parabolic this is. Meanwhile, gold, assets under management, or IAU, gold has had years, decades for this price appreciation, for assets to be put under management, to be stored, to be bought. And Bitcoin has completely blown it out of the water. I mean, every chart you see of Bitcoin versus gold in any iteration is completely insane, because Bitcoin has been breaking records like crazy. As Balaji says on the screen here, digital gold caught gold right before the election and surpassed it right after. If we actually take a look at this tweet, you can see here, BlackRock, this is back on November 8th, so well over a month ago. BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF is officially bigger than its gold ETF. This is back on November 8th, okay? This is like a month and a half ago almost. This is when that happened. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. We're also seeing that, according to Rajat Sani on X, there are rumors that the UAE has accumulated between 300 to 400,000 Bitcoin, up to double what the US owns. There's also, there's a lot of rumors, and I think very soon we're actually going to hear actual announcements and actual numbers, probably after the Bitcoin strategic reserve goes live. Which, another thing, I've seen comments over the last 24 hours from people that know no more than anyone else. In fact, they probably know less than your average person somehow, saying that there's no shot that the strategic reserve is getting started, or it's actually being created. I mean, how can you say something like that? Like, I have never once said it's definitely happening, but I've also never once said it's definitely not happening. I mean, if you want to just out yourself as a complete idiot, then you'll say this is definitely happening or definitely not happening. Because there's not a single person watching these videos that knows more than me or less than me. We all have access to the same information. You're not some insider who knows if there's actually going to be a spot ETF or not. Sorry, not a spot ETF. Actually, that's a really good point that I just messed that up, because back before the spot ETFs were approved, I got quite literally hundreds and over months, thousands of comments of people telling me there would never be a Bitcoin spot ETF approval. And then once it got approved, magically, you just never hear from those idiots ever again, right? Same thing with the strategic reserve, man. Like, you really have to be careful who you listen to, because there are so many people with ulterior motives, or their intentions are not pure. Their intentions are to kind of just maybe FUD you out of your position, or they have some type of like derangement syndrome against Bitcoin, where they like anything positive with Bitcoin just makes them angry and froth at the mouth, and the thought of Bitcoin going to $0 gives them the most blood to their nether regions that they've ever had, right? They get so turned on by the idea of Bitcoin going to zero. These are not serious people. These are not people that should be listened to, and for the most part they're not, but they're not people that should be listened to. They shouldn't be taken seriously, and they should be ignored, really. And so I just thought it was funny. Over the last couple of days, I've gotten comments of people saying definitively there's not going to be a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Okay, can you tell me some more fun facts that you're imagining in your head, these made up scenarios that you're making up? Like, I think it's funny. I mean, it sounds like I'm ranting a little bit, but more so I get enjoyment out of reading comments sometimes from people that quite literally potentially have the IQ of a tomato sandwich or something. Do you see that sell pressure is immense from long-term holders? As you see here, a further 40,000 Bitcoin were sold yesterday. The market has almost absorbed 1 million Bitcoin, basically saying the train isn't stopping. We're seeing a lot of supply changes in even just daily time periods, but the price for the most part is relatively flat. It's not like a substantial thing. And I actually want to talk about price in a little bit here, very, very seriously. We also see that Bitcoin was afraid, or Bitcoin for Freedom, as you can see right here, tweeted, or on X, he said that when I understood Bitcoin, I was afraid everyone else would understand it before I managed to sell my real estate and index funds to buy it. He was afraid something like this would happen. And really, over time, that is exactly what did happen. But if you look at when he was tweeting this is back in the depths of the bear market. This is when Bitcoin was much, much, much lower than it is currently. And according to Mags, the Scalping Pro on X, he believes that we are entering the thrill stage. If we zoom in on this, you can see where thrill goes very parabolic and then euphoria. And if I'm looking at this, I would say, yeah, that kind of lines up. I think we are in that final, those final few moments of the bull market. Meaning, and when I say moments, it's still going to be months long, but not years long. I don't think, if you would fast forward to exactly 1 year from now in December of 2025, if I'm being honest, you probably should have taken some profits or exited before then. Because if history is any guide, then we're probably going to be either in a bear market or entering one. Again, unless things change and unless Bitcoin and these ETFs and companies like MicroStrategy continue to just gobble up more Bitcoin and actually act as a reserve, then maybe things will be different. But we haven't seen that yet, so it would be crazy for me to say that's some sort of guarantee. The base case should be, in my opinion, for any reasonable person, your base case should be just to expect what we've always seen. Until we're shown something different, then what's the point in just making up scenarios in your head, right? But we also see that a new academic paper shows that Bitcoin is on track to exceed $1 million per coin in early 2027. That's interesting because really, we shouldn't expect the full extent of the next bull market if cycles are repeating until maybe 2020, I guess 2027 and 2028. But it's interesting, Dennis Porter posted this, and I think Bitcoin's going above $1 million in the next... I think Bitcoin's going above $1 million before 2030. So either way, give or take a couple years or two anyway, it doesn't matter that much. But one thing I want to highlight is this. So we see that an article was posted earlier today talking about a potential top for Bitcoin. If returns were to diminish by about 28%, above the moving average, which is consistent with prior cycles, Bitcoin would peak around $310,000 this cycle. But if we actually get smaller returns, if returns continue to shrink at a faster rate than previously, then we'd still land above $250,000. And so I think that's important and interesting to look at, considering that people are somehow calling a top already at $105,000. But as the next cycle unfolds, these predictions will become increasingly precise, providing opportunities for investors to optimize. We see that they expect this prediction to take shape in about 8 months from now, in August of 2025. And their prediction is between 250 to 300,000, basically. And what they use is the pi cycle top and bottom oscillator indicators. And so I thought that was interesting and worth bringing up. It is a prediction that Bitcoin Magazine Pro has put out. But we're also seeing this. This right here is the Bitcoin forecast based on the rate of adoption, the price of Bitcoin, and its power law describing its trend over time. And the only thing I really wanted to highlight here is that according to this, their calculations indicate that by 2045, so in about 21 years from now, Bitcoin's price could reach slightly under $10 million on the median, and on the higher end, over $20 million. Bitcoin's potential trajectory as the market is filled with individuals who settled for gains of 60 to 100% of people who exit too early. It's a very important thing to remember that a lot of people are not going to benefit from this whole thing, and they're going to sell too early. And yeah, I mean, I think that is most likely. That's really, I mean, that's another thing. You know how people talk about, oh, I wish I would have known about Bitcoin in 2010. I would be a trillionaire now because I would have bought it all back in 2010. That's the thing, though. Statistically, 99.999% of people would not have held this whole time. They would have sold it, or most likely lost it. That's another thing, because the storage options were a little, they weren't as great back then. So realistically, if you feel bad about not buying Bitcoin in 2010 or 2011 or 2012, you really shouldn't feel that bad, because chances are you wouldn't have held your bag that whole time anyway. You probably would have lost it. And I mean, statistically, you probably would have lost it. So I wouldn't really feel bad about it. In my opinion, it's definitely not too late to get in. So, hey, tomorrow's a new day. I just wouldn't dwell on the past. Is just my thoughts on that. But we also see, according to this on this forecast, that the person is not suggesting holding Bitcoin forever, as Michael Saylor advocates, but the person of this post basically saying it should definitely be held for as many years as you can, or until it becomes clear that it can be replaced by something, or there's something better, which as of today, he says, there's nothing better that exists. So take that for what you will. But also I want to highlight this. This is the projected relative peak for next year, but this cycle, based on the rate of adoption model, particularly considering the increased adoption driven by Bitcoin ETFs. The 2025 forecast for Bitcoin's peak is about 260,000, nearly double the previous estimate because of the current bullishness, I guess you could say. So either way, I think, if you would ask me, like, what is my prediction? What do I think that Bitcoin's going to get to in the next 6 to 8 months? My opinion, for what it's worth, is somewhere around 200,000 US dollars. So about a doubling from here. It's just my opinion. But what I actually want to talk about now is the price of Bitcoin right now, which is actually down on the day, right? As we were talking about, it's down about 3% or so at the time of recording. But the biggest thing that I want to talk about is this, and that is, clearly you can see that the price of Bitcoin is right now heading towards its 21-day moving average, which is exactly where we had about a week. Actually, I'm sorry, not a week, but what is this? From November 21st to Friday the 13th. So about almost an entire month where 100K was the big boss, where we couldn't get above it, right? We spent a lot of time trying to get above 100K for about 3 weeks. And then we finally did get above it. I mean, we had little cracks at it, like here on December 5th and stuff like that. But really, we didn't get concretely above it until recently. But you can see as well, right now, that's exactly where the 21-day moving average is basically right at about 100K. So this, in my opinion, is like the biggest test of 100K we've seen so far. We've broken above it concretely, where we've been above it for days now, like about a week or so. And now we're potentially initiating this back test. And really what you want to look for is daily and weekly closes above 100K and above this 21-day moving average at about 100K. And so in the short term, if we even get drops below 100K, wicks below 100K, in my opinion, that's expected. But what we really need to see is strength in daily and weekly candle closes above 100K. So even though we're dumping right now, as long as we can maintain this structure, and especially on the weekly chart, okay, then this is bullish. And I would even go as far to say as if in the future, over the next week or two, we actually get the scariest dump of our entire life, and see something like this happen, okay? Believe me, this would, like what we're doing right now, in my opinion, is not really a dump. This, in my opinion, is what we call a dump, okay? Something like this, where we see Bitcoin trend, I mean, what percent from where we are? That would be about another 20 to 30% drop. That would be a dump. And it would not be like some horrible thing. It would be a retest of like this gigantic amount of time we spent from the beginning of 2024 until now, right? About 70K, exactly where this 21-week moving average is. Now, I'm not saying all of this because I expect that's what's going to happen. But what I'm saying is that Bitcoin has gone up so much over the last, specifically month and a half, that if we have a bigger drawdown, worst case is what I just highlighted. This is the worst case scenario to where the bull market is still intact, in my opinion. Meaning that this is the worst that it could get, and I would still be bullish on this market. It could come down here. If, for example, and I don't think this is likely at all, but if Bitcoin somehow crashed down to 40,000 US dollars, then I would tell you this. I would say that's bearish. I would say now we're in a bear market. I would say we're not going to 200K. I would say we're getting banged. We're done, okay? As long as this holds up, this white line, right where the green 21-week moving average is, as long as that holds up, then I'm still bullish, absolutely. If we go below that, then that's when I turn bearish. So I try to make it as clear-cut and as easy to understand as possible. But in the very, very short term, This is a different chart. This is a daily chart. In the very, very short term, I think we at least have to go down to 100K, at least to the 21-day moving average, not the 21 week. This is the 21 week. This is the 21 day. I think we have to go at least here. It's very clear. I mean, we're actually, as I'm recording, we're basically there. So it's not like a very bold prediction. It basically has happened almost. But as I talked about back here, when we got this dump on December 9th and 10th, we needed to have daily closes like on this 21 day, and we did. And then we went higher. So really, we want to continue to see strength here at this 21-day moving average, just like we saw here, and also just like we saw on December 5th with this giant whipsaw candle, where we went up to 105K and then down to 90K and bounce. We just want to see strength on this pullback. Now, look at this chart. This is the S&P 500. On the day, it's down almost 2%. On the week, I mean, look at that. You can see this is a weekly chart on the bottom. This is a daily chart on top. That is substantially more dumpy than the stock market usually moves, right? And so with that being said, look at this. Because of the expectation that we're maybe not going to get as many rate cuts in 2025, look what the DXY is doing. It's retesting the highs from back on November 22nd. It's trying to move higher. And the stock market is going down because of that. And so is, I mean, Bitcoin, I expect, after I post this video, I expect if Bitcoin doesn't dump more than it is right now as I'm recording, then that's like impressive because it should be dumping more, especially considering how dumpy the stock market looks in comparison. But either way, I personally think, as I keep saying, I think over the next few days, this is going to be something that is going to largely be brushed over because realistically, and I'm talking about Bitcoin specifically, the bull case for Bitcoin is fundamentally different now than the bull case for the stock market. Okay. There is not a new incoming president who is saying that, hey, we're going to start creating a stock market reserve, which isn't even right. Like they're creating a Bitcoin reserve. Same thing with nations trying to allocate more to Bitcoin and especially as we talked about over the last few days, the European countries interested in buying Bitcoin as a reserve or as a treasury. Those are all like Bitcoin specific. So for the first time in history, we have a very fundamental reason why there could be a decoupling from Bitcoin and other traditional assets. There's a fundamental reason why that could happen. Because of pro-crypto regulation, a Bitcoin strategic reserve possibility, things like that have never been the case for Bitcoin before. So there's a lot more tailwinds for Bitcoin specifically than there are for, say, something like the SPX or the SPX or the NASDAQ or the Dow Jones. And for the first time in history, again, I think that gives Bitcoin a chance to actually decouple realistically, like fundamentally. It's a reason why we could see a decoupling. And get signed up with FEMX or BITUNIX below if you'd like to buy Bitcoin, altcoins, or trade. Without any further ado,